overtopped, we lose the electricity, we lose the hydraulic components, we lose the ability to do any controls whatsoever. So any water that we could hold back, from the moment you lose the project, now it's uncontrolled. It's as if you don't have the project there. The water's just going to overtop and keep coming through. You also have the possibility that you could have structural damage to the project, and you could actually lose the project. It could literally fall apart. That is an extraordinarily dangerous situation. Our folks were out on these projects working in heavy rain, the rain that you all experienced here in early May, literally putting their lives on the line to get the right measurements so that the water managers could adjust and the operators of the projects could adjust the water flow to prevent overtopping. Next slide. This is a picture at J. Percy. Go back, please. Thanks, Bill. This is a picture of just upstream of J. Percy Priest, and you can see this white line is basically the top of the project. You can see we're literally full, and that's full. Any water that's flowing in must be passed through, otherwise it overtops. If it overtops, you have all the potential catastrophic consequences that I just discussed. Next slide, please. This is Cheatham Lock and Dam, that's the project manager's office in normal weather. That was taken after the flood, thus the boards there. And then step in. And then this is close to the height of the flood event. We lost that project. Several of our people were actually on this project when the floodwaters came up, and they were in the process of moving equipment. And the floodwaters rose so rapidly that they were caught unawares and off guard. We lost a significant amount of our, not only the project, this is actually the place where we had the heaviest damage, about $18 million of damage to the project, but we also lost a significant amount of our equipment because we didn't move it to high ground fast enough, and some of our people lost their personal property, their cars and property that was inside the project site. The Corps of Engineers, as well as the citizens of Nashville, were affected by this, and in fact, we were not able to predict to ourselves how fast these floodwaters were going to rise. Next slide. Just a couple data points. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hancock. And the entire Nashville team and Ms. Debbie Lee, who's our water manager for the entire region, is on the line to answer questions. Already talked about over $51 million in damages to our project. Now, I'm not saying this because it's a core project, but this is another indicator of the magnitude of this event. $51 million in damages. Roughly $2 billion overall in damages to the Cumberland region. The Corps estimates that about $430 million in damages was avoided because of the way we operated our project. So even though we had significant flooding, major flooding, we didn't have as bad a flooding as we would have if we didn't have our projects and if we hadn't operated them properly. Already talked about Cheatham. Old Hickory, Cheatham about $18 million in damage. Old Hickory somewhere around $10 million in damage. So the bulk, almost 2/3 of the damage is just to those two projects. Now we're already executing about $3.8 million in emergency repairs to Cheatham and Old Hickory. Thanks to Congress, we have about $29 million in supplemental funding that's going to be applied to the critical aspects of our projects, mostly dam safety, life safety, and the ability to operate the projects as intended. But even with that generous funding, we've got about a $20 million shortfall in funding to bring all these projects whole. A little less than that, maybe $18 million. Next slide. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rich Hancock. Rich, come on up. While Rich is coming up, I'll make just a couple of points. The Army is a learning organization, and the Army Corps of Engineers is also a learning organization. We use the after-action review process that the Army has devised, basically from the time I came in 30 years ago, to identify what we've done right after a training event, figure out what we can do to improve, and then take those lessons and actually improve them. We put out this draft AAR that was published in July. We put it out for public comment. In addition to the feedback we got through the press, we received 4 public comments from 3 organizations and 1 individual. The Tennessee Broadcast Association, Ghislaine Solutions, an employee with the geological survey and extensive and continuous feedback from the National Weather Service, which actually continues to this day. We just got their final comments in the last couple of weeks. We're continuing to collaborate with the Weather Service on their service assessment, and we look forward to working with them collaboratively in the future as we move to fix all these issues. And with that, Mr. Rich Hancock, our Director of Business. Rich?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, sir. Just a couple of things to orient you. First, the after-action report is hundreds of pages of long. You can have access to this if you go to the FTP site or if you go to the Nashville website. The full report, including all appendices, are on that site. We are summarizing that for you today, but each one of you have a packet that have a fact sheet, 1 page long, much easier to read than the full report. Although we encourage you to read the report because it provides a lot of details in terms of timeline and detailed discussions of all the findings. But this report shows key points and what happened, and on the back side it shows a summary of the 27 lessons learned. So that's a reference for you to look at. In terms of our report, the after-action review was intended to be a transparent look at what happened during the flood event in early May. We had not only the technical team members from Nashville, which included the project operations folks, the water management staff, but we also had the emergency managers, and then we brought in outside team members from the Corps of Engineers, Great Lakes, and Ohio River Division in Cincinnati, and then we had Louisville team members and team members from Huntington District who weren't actually involved in the flood fight, but they have experience fighting floods and with emergency management operations. So we wanted to bring them in to help us look at this event. We had broken out the lessons learned, and they're actually in Appendix B of that big report that I showed you. But there's 27 lessons learned. 7 of them are identified as things to sustain. In other words, they worked well, but we want to continue with those things. 20 of them are things to improve. So it's things that mostly related to communications and water management issues, but things that we could do better. We also have broken them out into 3 categories. Communications, which we had 5 of the 27 items were related to communications. Emergency management, we had 12 of the items were emergency management items. And then water management, which had 10 items related to water management. This slide shows some of the examples. I wanted just to highlight a couple of the issues and some details of the issues that we found. Issue number 4 was related to improving risk communication. And it's really, during the event, as we were fighting this event, our staff was getting phone calls from the public at the same time. And so this improving risk communications is related to that issue. Really the Weather Service is responsible for providing flood forecasts to the public. The Corps is involved in communicating with the Weather Service so that those forecasts can be accurate. So our big lessons learned out of this one is we have a long-term initiative to work with USGS and the Weather Service to help them to develop flood inundation mapping, which is a critical risk communication tool with the public. These flood inundation maps can be looked at for various levels of storm, you know, a 50-year storm, a 100-year storm, or a major event like this, and people can actually look up at a map and see, okay, is my house going to be underwater in an event like this? So that's a good risk communication tool. Issue 19, which is triggers for us to activate our water management staff to 24-hour operations. We did not have those triggers in place during the May event. We did incorporate triggers that were in use during the August event. For example, in the May event, we went to 24-hour operations at 6:30 a.m. on the second day of the event, on Sunday. From that point on, we were 24-hour operations through the flooding event. During the August event, we had a trigger set at Nashville at the flood stage of 30 feet. Now that's below flood stage. Flood stage is 40 feet in Nashville. But at the 30-foot mark, we went to 24-hour operations. So that was an improvement that we incorporated into the August event. Issue number 20 is related to improving an understanding between technical information shared between the Corps and the National Weather Service. And that issue is really related to